I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. How can we be prepared for that which we do not know? But I do know we are ready to encounter it. Really? Yes, absolutely. That's why we're out here.
Your Honor, Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits. This is about saving the future of humanity.
Things are only impossible until they're not.
Yes, sir. The first duty of every Starfleet officer is to the truth, whether it's scientific truth, or historical truth, or personal truth. It is the guiding principle on which Starfleet is based. Come.
I am Locutus of Borg.
Tea Earl Grey, hot.
Make it so.
Captain, I have complete confidence in your ability to represent my interests.
Oh, Data. You never know what's over the horizon.
To new worlds, sir.
To new worlds.
Engage.
Hello and welcome to Picard Parsec, a podcast about the CBS All Access series Picard. I'm Travis Fishburne.
I'm Ryan DeVere.
And I'm Joel Houghton.
And this week we will be covering Season 1, Episode 1, Remembrance. So before we get into all of that, I think it would be very apt for us to all kind of talk about our personal history, maybe with the Star Trek franchise and kind of our expectations for this show, for the character, for what all these things that it's bringing to the table.
So I grew up in a family that was very Star Trek oriented. We like Star Wars, but as the legend goes, my mother's water broke while a new episode of Star Trek was premiering, and I was born late because Dad wanted to stay and finish the new episode.
Wow. Of Next Generation, I assume.
Next Generation, yeah. I'm not that old.
Well, you could not be that young either. It could be Deep Space Nine or Voyager.
That's true. No, definitely Next Generation. We could have skipped anything else. So I grew up watching it. We would get it by the season and just chew through it. Mm-hmm. I've watched every subsequent series to some extent or another. I know there are some that I haven't finished. And then we were just talking about this, but like the original series, because I was introduced to the Next Generation first.
Yeah.
I've never been able to make it more than a couple episodes into the original series, because it's such a tonal shift,
mm-hmm.
and it's so zany and has just not aged well at all. I've never been able to make it.
Yeah,
very
if
deep
you
into
start.
That.
Yeah, I can see if you start in Next Gen, going backwards from there, be difficult to do.
Yeah.
How about the like the films, like the films like starring the original cast?
I think First Contact was actually one of the first movies I ever saw in theaters.
Wow.
Because I remember having nightmares about Picard and the Borg and those sequences. So very deep, long history for Star Trek for me.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
What about you, Joe?
Well, I saw Star Wars for the first time when I was like 5, and then that became my life. There was no room for any other Star things. So I have seen the first 2 Chris Pine movies,
mm-hmm.
which I remember almost nothing about. They were fine. Not bad, not good. They were fine. I tried to watch the first episode of the original with William Shatner.
Yeah.
Awful. I'm not sure how far I made it in, but wasn't far. And I have seen one of the original movies. It might have been The Wrath of Khan.
More than likely.
Because we watched the second one with Benedict Cumberbatch, and she was like, "Oh, Khan is in it." So
yeah.
I just remember Spock dying
spoilers.
in a closet or something, and
mm-hmm.
in a chamber maybe. And,
the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
That's what I remember. So I know nothing about Star Trek at all.
Cool. Yeah.
Great.
So,
what about you?
Personally, yeah, I was very similar. I grew up primarily Star Wars, thinking, that was the only Star franchise in my life. And then it was in 2007-8 when all of these news items were coming out about JJ directing a new Star Trek film and all the casting, and it's, you know, they're going back to the original cast, and I'm like, I've never had much of an interest in Star Trek, but I like JJ Abrams, and I'm like very intrigued about this. So I went back and I started with the original series. I've watched every episode of the original series, and then the movies and Next Gen I've watched, I would say 90 to 95% of the episodes. Because there are so many episodes. I referenced IMDb, and if it fell below a certain rating of like, this one's probably a terrible episode, I'm gonna skip it.
How many seasons were there?
7.
7. Okay, yeah, a lot.
Yeah, but right now Sarah and I are going through Next Gen, and we are watching every episode. And ironically, like, the worst episodes are almost more fun to watch.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, the ending of season 2, there's with Riker, he's in a coma, and it's basically a clip show. It's pretty incredible.
They had a lot of fun making this show.
Yeah.
Like it covers a lot of. I mean, they would take whole episodes just to dedicate to the holodeck, and all right, it's a Sherlock Holmes mystery.
Oh
this
yeah,
week.
I love those ones. Oh, we're coming close to watching A Fistful of Datas, which I love so much. But yeah, and then after Next Gen, I tried to get into Deep Space Nine, and I think I had been with the characters and the crew on the Enterprise for Next Gen so long, the shift was too much, and I was like, I'll try to do this later. So I never got into Deep Space Nine, never got into Voyager or anything else other than like the feature films and those 2 series. And Discovery. I do like Discovery. So
Interesting. I never got to watch Discovery. That's actually the one that's a big hole in Star Trek for me.
Mm-hmm.
But Joel, you got to.
I tried to watch it, and it was just very, very cheesy. It looked like the sets were made out of cardboard, and the writing was very bad, and the acting was... The production quality of Discovery, in my opinion, was very low.
I was going to say, we already talked about the original series.
It seemed like just they were trying to go back to that. It was just the same sets and the same special effects, and it just was not good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Contrast that, if we can move to Picard now.
Yeah.
I thought the production quality was phenomenal. It was like watching a movie. Like
it was
the
great.
writing was great. The cinematography was awesome. The acting was good. It was very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah, this show's got a budget.
Yes, it does.
Like, holy cow.
And it's already been renewed for season 2, before it even aired.
So this wouldn't be a Who Watches podcast if we didn't dive into streaming and those tendencies. Does getting a season 2 mean what it used to? It seems like most shows, just to save face, most networks now just automatically renew for a second season
It's
if
kind
they
of to
can.
build up a library.
Yeah. So I want to believe that it's because CBS like loves this and they love the direction. And they believe in it. They're going to put, and obviously they've put a lot of money towards it, and they've done a lot of work to get contracts and like get these people playing the characters that they used to. But I don't know. I just feel like everybody gets that automatic second season.
It's
now.
probably because there's a bit of marketing to it. Like, nobody likes to just watch one season of something. There was a show called Jericho that I started watching.
yeah.
I got decently far into it. Then I realized it was only, I think, 2 seasons. And I just stopped watching it because I didn't want to get there and end. So maybe if they're promising people more content, they're going to sign up for the service and they're going to watch it now because they know there's going to be more.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's why HBO and Damon Lindelof were so quiet about whether there would be a second season of Watchmen while it was airing? Because they're like, just keep watching. We don't want you to bail because you don't think there's a future.
They just finally kind of announced that he's left the project. I think Lindelof said he gives his blessing to anybody else who might want to continue
give it a go.
But I felt like that was kind of like a wink as he was walking out the door of like, yeah, good luck. But I don't know. Anyway, I'm glad that they're putting effort towards it at least.
Mm-hmm.
This is clearly they want it to be Star Trek.
Yeah.
And capture kind of an audience that most Star Trek fans have either had to move on or just keep rewatching Next Generation.
Yes. Yes, this is very interesting because, this series is the first time they're like kind of like moving into the future. With Discovery, it's like let's go back in the past and let's try to reconcile like the original series and fitting this in with that. And it's very hard for me to watch Discovery sometimes thinking like, and then the original series follows this, and then this is and the other direction. This is like far in the future, and it's in the future of a timeline that they've forgotten about and veered off in terms of like the movies.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So will you set the stage for me for Picard? I know who Picard is,
Mm-hmm.
and that he's the one of the admirals.
Mm-hmm.
Who is he? How did we get to the start of episode 1?
Well, they kind of like dive into this in the actual episode because I think there's an expository scene in which it's filling in the gaps for everybody watching whether or not they've seen all the shows and movies or not, because this has been the last time that we saw Captain Picard and Data, because Data is playing pretty integral role in this series, it seems, was in Nemesis. And Nemesis I actually only watched for the first time in the past week.
Oh, seriously?
Yes, because
Tom Hardy.
yeah. Oh, and I knew everything. I thought I knew everything about Nemesis because I knew what happened in it. I knew, spoiler for this show, Data dies in Nemesis. But
I had gathered that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did not know who the villain in Nemesis was. And when that was I was like, oh, this is interesting.
So spoilers for Nemesis. The
Yeah, I keep jumping around like spoilers for Nemesis. I don't know why.
in Star Trek Nemesis, the villain is a clone of Picard. Somebody along the way stole. In the movie, they say maybe somebody took a hair follicle, which I always thought was hilarious because he's very bald.
He's got some around the back.
It's like he would notice if
Yeah.
one's gone.
Probably.
But they also find throughout the course of the movie, they also find another android, which is an earlier model of Data, which would have been like a prototype Data. And so you're led to believe by the end of the film, Data sacrifices himself, but had a backup.
And they even say it in this show that he backed up everything into B4 is what it's called.
Yeah.
But it didn't work.
And at the
Right.
end of the movie, they load him up, and they're like, all right, we're gonna get Data back, and it doesn't really work. It doesn't take, and he's just kind of still the android that he was before. But
They
at
should
the
have had
end-
R2D2 restore his memory.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That would have gone
have
better.
R2. But then as like Picard is leaving the room kind of defeated, B4 starts kind of humming the wedding tune that he sang at the first officer's wedding earlier in the film. And so you're kind of led to believe that Data will be back.
Things are
that
like
this
coming
is-
together.
Yeah. Which for such a long time now has been the end of the series. And so it seems
Now he's
like
in a drawer.
but now
Yeah.
it's
I don't know why they were
Let's
like,
just jump to the end of the
it's
episode,
just
I
not
guess.
working for this guy. Let's take him apart.
yeah. So Picard, so the journey of Picard through the Next Generation is the Enterprise's mission is to seek out new life, to go where no man's gone before. Right, they're the front line, and so he's more or less a diplomat. He's constantly trying to make peace and navigate situations. His is more of a he's not an action kind of a captain, whereas
Picard. Not Picard.
right, yeah, Kirk.
Yeah, Kirk.
Kirk, is like he goes out, gets in fist fights, and finds all kinds of alien women. Picard is the opposite of that. He's much more content having diplomatic conversations and working through the issues. He's
negotiating.
Yeah. And that's really when the show is firing on all cylinders, is when Picard outsmarts the enemy. You know, he finds a loophole in their million-year-old laws that allows for them to create a civilization on this planet, or, you know, that kind of stuff.
And he does talk. He says, "Yeah, I can be very persuasive."
Very much so.
So
Yeah.
is the Romulan sun exploding? Is that happened in the interim between the
new.
show? That's not a.
Yeah.
It's brand new.
Okay.
But Picard always kind of takes this stance of he's always trying to preserve life. He's never. The Romulans are always the antagonists throughout the whole series, and he's always reluctant to have to fight them. And so it's very much in his character that the sun's exploding, Romulans are crying out for help, and so he starts to try and aid them. But it's also pretty... humans have known nothing but like this full generation of war with Romulans. Everybody's pretty jaded towards them at this point. Most people have lost family members and things. And
The
so
Klingons especially.
yeah. So it's really interesting the way that they brought this kind of around, is that Picard would become disenfranchised with the Federation, which is who he's fought for all these seasons, because they don't value life as much as he does, apparently. And so it's a different kind of Picard that we're running into, where he's never been anything but this diplomat. He's always stood for what the Federation stands for. He's always fighting for the good in everybody kind of captain. And now he's at this point where he doesn't feel like the Federation is good.
So he bows out.
So he bows
to
out.
Chateau Picard. Chateau Picard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just an old family winery.
Yeah. Does that help at all?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was about to say, you just kind of like summed it all up.
I don't even
Ryan.
have to
So,
watch
yeah.
Next Generation anymore. That's it.
Yeah, that was really
I
the
wouldn't
premise.
say that.
We'll see.
They've really, for this show, they've really cherry picked kind of some of the best storylines though from Next Generation. Because you can't really talk about Next Generation without talking about Data. He is who he is. He's the most interesting thing in Star Trek. And then we get the teaser at the very end, which is another really interesting development, but we'll get there.
Which is another thing about Next Gen. The Romulans are another thing.
Yeah. But then you also have Picard. There's a couple times in the show that he's at odds with the Federation, and it's always interesting because it doesn't happen often, but when it does...
When it does, it always seems to be more of an individual who seems to be corrupt within the system rather than the system as a whole, I would say.
Right. Throughout the whole series of the Next Generation, the Federation is kind of this just good force.
It's like
in the
Gene
universe.
Roddenberry's like vision of
utopian humanity.
Exactly.
They've done away with poverty. They've done away like all these. They have replicators and stuff, so food isn't really an issue.
It's always the question for me with, well, like especially now that we're seeing Earth and everything, so we're in this like this society where there is no money and there is no poverty or anything. So I'm like, so how does all this work? Like, what's this? What's the vineyard doing and what?
Yeah.
The economics of it.
Why did Dodge only have one flavor of milkshake?
Yeah.
She only had vanilla.
She had a bad replicator, apparently.
A limited menu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem equal to me.
Well, I mean, it's like any socialist country. I mean, you put in a ticket, and eventually it'll get taken.
She's got it on order. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting if we explore that, and I just feel like we probably won't, because it's such a hard... You'd have to spend so much time navigating the ins and outs of how this works that it would distract entirely from any narrative the show's trying to put out.
I don't really expect them to. It's just always a question on my mind. I'm like, all right, so people just do this not for financial gain at all. It's all for like the betterment of humanity and for
Star Trek Next Generation, at least, really basically paints this picture that humanity has figured it out. We've got, everybody's working towards the good in everybody else, and we don't there's even references to like there's storm dissipators and things, so like natural disasters don't happen on Earth anymore, and food is plentiful, and jobs are great, and like humanity's in the best place it probably could ever possibly be. And that's what you're presented basically throughout all of the Next Generation. All of the conflict comes from other species, other aliens, or just social dynamics.
Which is what we have here with the Romulans coming.
Yeah. Yeah, which we'll get more of that. So I doubt that they'll like shine a light on the corrupt underbelly of the political climate of the Federation.
Maybe that's season 2.
But it is interesting that he's had a falling out with what more or less through the rest of the series is ultimately just kind of the best of humanity. So I'm curious how they navigate that.
Yeah. Cool. So I guess we can get into the episode. Before we do, there was a bit of a prequel to this episode and series that came out on Star Trek. They've been releasing these things called Star Trek Short Treks. I don't know if you've been aware of these.
I only just became aware of them like in the last day or so.
Yeah, they're just these short little episodic things. I've not watched any of them until now because it seemed very necessary. Not very necessary, but good thing to watch for this. And the short trek it's called Children of Mars, and it's about 2 little girls whose one's mother and one's father are working on the Utopia Planitia on Mars. And they are going to school on Earth. And it's a very eye-rolly kind of it's almost a silent film because it's all set against David Bowie's We Could Be Heroes. And like halfway through, I'm like, this is really all this is going to be, okay. And then and they're like fighting, and at some point the attack on Mars happens, and it ends with them holding hands.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, I don't know if this is really the way to go with this, but it kind of like tells you about the massacre that happened on Mars that sets this series up.
Yeah. When did that come out? When did they start doing those?
The short treks they started to do a few years ago, and I've never watched any of them, but a lot of them are like short little things that happen. Like they started with Discovery, and Sarah and I were watching season 2 of Discovery last year, and a character shows up, and it seemed to be somebody who is this? Like, it seemed to be important. They kept referencing like, oh, the last time we saw you, and we're like, what? We don't remember this character at all. And I looked it up, and she premiered in a Short Treks episode. And I'm like, I can't believe it. They're like pulling things out of there. But,
interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to backtrack to those.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if there's a chance that they're going to be pulling
exactly
people or the
they try to do that again. But yeah. So other than that, this series opens up with a dream sequence in which Data and Picard are playing a game of poker on the Enterprise.
You have a tell.
That is impossible, sir.
Every now and then, you dilate your left pupil, ostentatiously, I might add, in an effort to cheat me into thinking that you have a tell. But your true tell is you don't have one. When your eyes are neutral, That's when I know you're bluffing.
Now that you've told me that, Captain, I am confused about which deception to employ.
Yeah, it's just good to see that Enterprise back on television.
Mm-hmm.
And then 10 Forward back on television.
Yeah.
Historically, throughout Next Generation, all of the commanders, all the officers are playing poker at different times.
Mm-hmm.
It's not until the very last episode of the Next Generation that Picard joins them, and it's saying something along the lines of like, he should have been doing this all along or something. So it was a deliberate action for them to open up this show with Picard playing poker with one of the officers.
One that he probably, misses greatly and wishes that he had had more time like that with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Man,
because he asks why he's stalling, and he says, "I don't want the
game to end."
Yeah. I mean, first shot though, Data looks old.
Yeah, it's hard to get past. I'm like, all right, androids do age a little bit. And I know they said that they use de-aging technology on Brent Spiner too.
Like they smoothed out like kind of his cheeks and stuff. I can see some of it, but at the same time, he still looks pretty old.
Yeah.
And same holds for Patrick Stewart. Like,
yeah, but he's supposed to be old, whereas the other one is supposed to be kind of ageless.
I mean, first shot of this series, I'm a little concerned. Like, Patrick Stewart seems pretty old in this, and he's supposed to, but at the same time, this is also... There's a lot of action that happened in this episode, and I'm, like, concerned for him in scenes. It's like, oh, nope, that's a lot of broken bones there, buddy. It's really good to see this, and like I really hope this is a good turn for Star Trek to like come back into public favor and we get a good one again. But man, I can't not be concerned for his health every time he does something.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Anyway, that was just like, I don't know. It was
a
realization.
Are you concerned for the character, or are you concerned for Patrick Stewart?
I mean, I guess both. But like, there's just this level of. It pulls me out of the show to be like, first of all, it's been this long since the Next Generation,
mm-hmm.
but also like, oh man, a real 90-year-old man couldn't take a hit like that. That would be catastrophic.
Well, I mean, there's also like the future medical technology. We don't know how people age in the future.
Yeah, he could be mostly cybernetic by now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the
more machine now than man.
Yeah, and the pilot episode for Next Gen, Bones, Dr. McCoy is he has a scene with Data, and I think at that point, like Data tells him his age. I can't remember exactly what it is, but he's like well over like 120 or 130 years old.
Have you got some reason you want my atoms scattered all over space, boy?
No, sir. But at your age, sir, I thought you shouldn't have to put up with the time and trouble of a shuttlecraft.
Hold it right there, boy.
Sir?
What about my age?
Sorry, sir. If that subject troubles you.
Troubles me? What's so damn troublesome about not having died? How old do you think I am anyway?
137 years, Admiral, according to Starfleet records.
Explain how you remember that so exactly.
I remember every fact I'm exposed to, sir.
I don't see no points on your ears, boy. But you sound like a Vulcan.
No, sir. I'm an android.
Almost as bad.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah,
so he's just
it's
getting
an
started.
awesome scene. It was the last time
Picard's just getting warmed up.
Yeah, even so, my concern still stands. But yeah, he's kind of lingering on the game. He doesn't want it to end. And like, in a lot of ways, I think say what you will about like Wesley Crusher, but I think Data was always kind of Picard's protege. He always wanted Data to be him and more, and so for this series to seemingly be revolving around that relationship, it's really kind of touching.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, they sort of, when he's shuffling, they show a very deliberate shot under his hands, and the bottom card is a king. To me, it's sort of like, oh, look, the king is back, even though I don't know anything about Star Trek. I know that Picard's a big deal. And then when Data, I don't know how, Data
is, I think...
Data's fine.
Yeah.
Because I said it one way, and my wife was like, no, it's the other way, so I don't know.
Yeah, actually, I think when Brent Spiner was getting the character ready, I've heard, he was calling it Data. And then when Patrick Stewart said the name during a reading or a shoot, he said Data, and it kind of like has been that ever since.
Yeah. Okay. It's a little bit like Han and Han.
To only Lando calls him Data.
There are a couple
of
characters in the show that call him Data. Or most characters call him Data. Some characters, like typically like the one-off characters in an episode, will call him Data. But it's
Dr. Pulaski definitely would have.
So then when Data lays down his hand, it's all queens, which is one removed from the king. I thought that was symbolic also.
Yeah. I don't know
if there was anything to it.
Also, that many queens in a deck is impossible.
Yeah, that's how we figured out it was a dream. I was like, oh, Data's cheating, and Picard was like, right behind me, Data's cheating.
Yeah. So then he looks outside and he sees that it's Mars, and he's like, oh, I didn't know we were going to Mars. And then the attack happens. We don't know that yet, but all of a sudden, like, Mars gets destroyed, and he wakes up in a bed next to Number One, his dog, in Chateau Picard, France.
Yeah. Oh shoot! Which movie is it that he's it's got to be Nemesis, right? That he's given. It's one of the movies. It's one of the Star Trek movies. Why am I blanking on this?
Well, what are we looking
for? Where he's
Guinan's in Generations. That's the only one she's in.
So that's got to be it.
Yeah.
Where he's like living this alternate reality where he's like retired and lives in the Chateau Picard, and like that's always very much been attributed to me as like the lie. Like that's never how Picard would actually settle down, even if it's what he's like, even if it's fitting for him. That he's too much an officer, he's too much a military man to ever retire and just disappear. And so every scene here in Chateau Picard feels so sad to me. Like even if it's this cool life and like, yeah, sure, this is what he could be, it's always this shiny alternative for him. And so him waking up there is like, oh man, this feels more like the dream to me than him sitting on 10 forward.
Well, that's what he says. He says, the dreams are lovely.
Yeah.
I'm starting to resent waking up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To which he's living with, I thought initially, culturally, I thought they were Vulcans.
Yeah, we see him, and we see his two helpers, and at first, physiologically, you're like, oh, are they Vulcans? And then once they start talking, it's like, no, they really can't be Vulcans, just because Vulcans act more like Data to a degree, where they're like very, withhold their emotions and everything.
Robotic.
So, and you're like, oh, so these are Romulans, and then once you put those pieces together about what happened before, you're like, oh, these are Romulan refugees, like Ozymandias' Vietnamese refugees.
Will Wheaton has a show on CBS's YouTube.
The After Track.
The Ready Room.
Oh, the Ready Room.
Which he talked about some good stuff. Like he was talking with some of the producers and writers and stuff, and he was talking about the Vulcans versus Romulans. And it sounds like in coming episodes we'll get more info on them and who they are and why they're around, because clearly there's still some sort of bias from humans towards Romulans.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I don't know.
Sorry, that was.
I was gonna say, do you think Romulans like get insulted when they're mistaken for Vulcans and vice versa?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It-
They're like,
it's-
they're genetically like cousins.
So
I
would-
figured because
they
the
all-
ears and the
Mhm.
eyebrows are the same.
Yeah, they all came from Vulcan originally.
Yeah.
I've heard somebody say it's like it would be like the kind of correlation between like humans and Neanderthals, which I don't know how well that holds
That's
up. That's such a
interesting.
weird, yeah. But like very, very similarly related. Vulcans at some point in their culture have distanced themselves from emotion, seeing it as insanity and favoring facts and reality. But they're also telepathic, whereas Romulans are never really shown to be telepathic. And so you get like the Vulcan mind meld and stuff. But even then, their culture, as they got rid of emotion, they also started to see telepathy, like mind melding with people, as kind of a perverted act. And so it's they got problems. They're all kind of hung up. Whereas Romulans are just angry and try to kill everybody. And they have green blood.
Yes, they do. So then we see Dodge and her boyfriend, and they're enjoying an evening together when all of a sudden they're attacked by 3 like people wearing like these black uniforms and helmets and masks, and they kill her boyfriend.
Well, now I don't know, as I've stated, I don't know anything about Star Trek, but I know that the first person to always die is wearing a red shirt, and her boyfriend was wearing a red shirt.
Yeah, that was a great
Wow,
pickup.
I didn't put that together.
Yeah. Yeah, as we were
It
watching
had to be deliberate.
Yeah.
Which that's something they kind of changed in Next Gen with the Picard series, is because command, like the colors are always representative of something, and in the original series gold was like command and red was like engineering and security and blue was science and medical, and they swapped gold and red in Next Gen because I guess Patrick Stewart looked better in red than in gold.
Yeah, it would have been weird to watch him in gold.
Yeah.
It also puts some distance between like who Picard is and who Kirk is.
Mhm.
But yeah, they largely Next Generation doesn't really have the trope of the red shirt dying.
No.
Well, they started here with Picard.
But they started
the
here.
first
went
guy
back.
to die.
They're very aware, like just Star Trek in general is very aware of that. Even, I mean, the movies pay homage to that too.
Yeah, and there's like I've seen like a meme. I don't know if it's a T-shirt or if it's just a meme, but it's like a stormtrooper shooting at like a Star Trek red shirt, and the red shirt like the stormtrooper said I missed, and then the red shirt said I died anyway.
But yeah, he gets super dead really quick with a knife.
Yeah.
Why a knife? Like,
Yeah, there's got to be more
they have
efficient
these-
ways of killing in the
These
future.
laser guns that
Right.
seem pretty clean, that just to make a statement. Like they just wanted to make a violent statement.
Mm-hmm.
To who? This lady they're gonna abduct, I guess.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and
So
they
they-
check her and they're like, oh, she's not been activated yet.
Right, and then they put a sheet over her head, which also was like, this is the future. Like, they still use
Just bags.
pillowcases.
They don't
over
have like
people's
a
heads?
baton they can just shock her with, and
Yeah,
she
because
goes
they put
in
a high-tech thing like over her face to like
Right.
check her out.
They
but
couldn't just blind her
and
either.
then just
Put her,
a
like, a
pillowcase.
Geordie visor on her.
No, and then they put the pillowcase over her, and they're like, ah, crap, she activated.
Yeah.
Apparently, this chick's been on a hair trigger her whole life, but
Never been in a life or
but
death
no, yeah,
situation.
she never. Yeah, she didn't get hazed in college. Apparently, that would have been a massacre.
Wasn't part of her implanted memories.
Yeah. Also, they teleport in,
Mm-hmm.
and then they go to kidnap her, but they don't teleport out. Like, couldn't they have just grabbed her and gone?
Yeah,
Apparently
we don't
not.
know.
Yeah.
They also ask her, "Where are the rest of you? Where are you from?"
Yeah. Which she responds that she's from Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Which I believe that's where that scene takes place in.
In Seattle?
Mhm.
They're in Seattle.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah. There's a lot of globetrotting in this series so far, like very quickly. And I'm like, oh, it's the future. I guess we're used to seeing them
Yeah, I mean, the
Can't you
go
just,
walk
transporters.
nine all
beam
over
over
planets.
to France
So
then?
yeah.
They gotta
Yeah.
fly.
If you could just make it, yeah, you could make it into space just in a matter of seconds, then why not? Sure.
But the question, where are you from, didn't make a lot of sense. Because clearly they came and they knew what she was, because they knew to monitor for the activation. And they're like, where are you from? Don't you already know that? Like, where are the others is a legitimate question. I get that.
Mhm.
But where are you from? You kind of already
Yeah, that's
know.
interesting.
Unless they're trying to, like, they have a checklist and there's, like, one from Seattle and they got to get that one. And then they got to...
Well, and that might be they might be looking for where, because as we find out throughout the episode, she is an android,
Mm-hmm.
which we don't ever actually get confirmation of that. We just are kind of asked
It's
to believe
very,
that.
yeah, it's never like stated fully like, this is what you are. It's always, if you're who I think you are,
Yeah,
then I
which-
believe you. Yeah.
She does things throughout the episode that makes you think she must, but they might be trying to track down where she's made, where she's manufactured, where are you from, if she's not been activated. I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know. It's reasonable to think.
Seems
it's
like a
also
weird question to
clever.
ask when you're abducting somebody. I don't think that's common on the abductors' questions. Like, that's not a preliminary. You like, do you have any weapons?
Where are you from?
you
What is
trained
your
in martial
shoe
arts?
size?
Where, yeah. Who's
Yeah.
your dentist? Like, I don't think that these are like. You can get that information later.
Do you take showers or baths? Do you take showers or baths? But yeah, then she activates and just
Which the choreography, the fighting with this scene and in the later on is very well done.
Yeah.
It's convincing.
it's convincing. She looked like she killed those
They
people.
looked really dead. They laid there very
Yeah.
like the fighting was well done. I appreciated that.
Yeah. And then after that, we return to Chateau Picard, where Picard's roaming the vineyards with Number One. He comes back, and Zhaban and Laris are the two Romulans' names, and they ask him about the dreams, and then they are getting him ready for an interview, apparently, because some people are showing up.
Which I thought this was a great way to kind of catch the audience up on what's, this time gap.
Mhm.
It was very clever.
The interview,
Yeah.
I'm sure that I've seen this used before for exposition. It just felt right here. Because it doesn't just, it's not laying out his life as if it's a biography. Like, you still have to make some jumps to catch on. But it covers some major events that we just otherwise don't know about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just thought it was a great device to move the plot forward without it feeling super awkward.
No, because during the entire time I'm watching it and I'm listening and I'm like, is any of this familiar? Should I know any of this? And then afterwards I'm like, all right, that's none of that was something we should have known before. It was all new information.
Yeah. And that's the scene too. You never know in stuff like this with an older actor coming back. Like, is he just coming back for a paycheck? Like, is he just gonna phone it in? But he's really he's convincing in that scene. He plays that really well.
Yeah.
So you knew that he's coming to.
Yeah.
And that's honestly very reminiscent of what he brought to Next Generation. Like, prior to Patrick Stewart being on Next Generation, Star Trek was this hokey kind of sci-fi
with
show.
William Shatner.
With William
Yeah.
Shatner, right. The fact that they brought in this very theatrically trained, good, he can present a monologue incredibly well. And it added this whole level of legitimacy to the show because he can act so well. And we get that again. I mean, it felt very much like Picard.
Yeah.
That was my question: was he gonna? Because I know he was good, and I've seen him in other stuff, but was he gonna show up again? And that was dispelled.
He shows up.
He does a very good job.
I don't know if I've ever seen Patrick Stewart just show up for a paycheck though. Maybe the emoji.
I was about to say when he played Poop in the Emoji Movie, I can guarantee
like
that.
you said, he's old. Like he's up there.
He's been old for a long time. He's still done a great job for a long time. Yeah, I'm sure there are some like one-up, but like even like in Logan, he was old. You know, he's supposed to play this old version of not Magneto, of Professor Xavier, and he does a phenomenal job in that performance too.
He also works with Seth MacFarlane a lot. He's done like Family Guy voices, and he was the narrator in Ted. But even that, I think he was like actually like having fun. I don't think it was like paycheck. And Seth MacFarlane's obviously a big Star Trek fan as well.
With the Orville too. Yeah, if you're looking for an easier franchise to dip into, the Orville is like still in its first couple seasons, and it's really good.
Yeah, feels like you're watching Next Gen.
Yeah, in a lot of ways.
But
sans Patrick Stewart's monologues.
But Patrick Stewart also has like this vested interest in the character and his legacy, and he's an executive producer on the show. He has a lot of say in it, so we got to have say in this character and where they were going with it and how he was portrayed, which is great because I feel like he is getting to do this in a way that I think Mark Hamill probably really wished he could have.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Say like, on the other side of the coin is like Mark Hamill, who is just like, do your job. That's all we're like paying you to do. We don't care what your opinion of your character is.
Yeah. No, also in the Ready Room thing, they're talking with the director of the episode, and Will Wheaton is asking like, I remember as a kid, 27 years ago or whatever, the intensity, every scene that he's in, he encourage, like, you feel inspired to be better at what you do. Does he still bring that? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. Like, we sat down and read at the script reading, and afterwards he called the director up. He sent her an email, said, hey, we should talk. And she was like, I can't believe how nervous I was to like, I felt like a kid waiting in the principal's office to meet the principal, and like he came in and he's like, yeah, I think this is, can we play it a little bit like this or a little bit like that? And like, he seems really super invested in this, which, yeah, not even just his performance, but like as a concept, I think he really loves Star Trek.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It shows. Yeah. It bleeds through.
So yeah, during that interview, like we get all the exposition about the attack on the on Mars in the Utopia Plan News show, where they're like building ships by a rogue group of androids, and then after that, all synthetic life forms were banned. They don't know like why it happened.
Yeah.
My question is, in Star Wars, the droids are owned by people and they're agents of whoever. Is that the case with these, with Data? Does he belong to somebody and work?
So Star Trek really doesn't have, in the Next Generation, there really aren't a lot of androids. They're one-off characters at best. They're few and far between. Data is
a one of a kind.
Really one of a kind. Like
kind of a two of a kind. If you
right. So Noonien Soon was the creator, genius in his field, hundreds of years before anybody else was making the breakthroughs that he did, and he only was able to succeed, quote unquote, with two of his concepts. One being Data, the other being his evil twin, Lore.
The dyad.
The dyad in the
before the dyad.
The other one he gave the necklace to.
Yeah. And like that, we also see that kind of come back later in this episode, that there's always two. For whatever reason, they have to be developed.
No less.
They have to be developed as like a twin set.
So there's not people that own. I just was wondering because they talk about these rogue whatever. Is there going to be like a shadow organization behind the attack?
There could be, but most of this is just pretty new to Star Trek in general.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, we'll get into it in a scene later, but the question of Data being like a free agent and him being owned was brought up in Star Trek with a specific character that is referenced here later.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, and we learn about him turning away from Starfleet because it wasn't Starfleet anymore to him.
What was it that you lost faith in, Admiral? You've never spoken about your departure from Starfleet. Didn't you, in fact, resign your commission in protest? Tell us, Admiral. Why did you really quit Starfleet?
Because it was no longer Starfleet.
I'm sorry?
Because it was no longer Starfleet. We withdrew. The galaxy was mourning, burying its dead. And Starfleet slunk from its duties. The decision to call off the rescue and to abandon those people we had sworn to save was not just dishonorable. It was downright criminal. And I was not prepared to stand by and be a spectator. And you, my dear, you have no idea what Dunkirk is, right? You're a stranger to history. You're a stranger to war. You just wave your hand and it all goes away. Well, it's not so easy for those who died. And it was not so easy for those who were left behind. We're done here.
Yeah, which is interesting that his it's kind of drawing a line in the sand saying it wasn't Picard that changed. This is the same Picard we've always ever known. It was the Federation that's different now. And they were just very careful in how they worded that it's not the Federation anymore. Huh, interesting. I really wonder how much we're going to get into this. By and large, in the Next Generation, the Starfleet is not... There's not a lot of consistent characters. Like, every once in a while, they'll get a message from this admiral or this captain or whatever. But for the most part, it's pretty nebulous. It's more of just this concept of a military branch, and not like he's not reporting to this one admiral.
Yeah, no, you don't see that.
And so I wonder, there's not a lot of characters for them to pull from to really build off of this, to have that conflict of him like, you used to be different, right? Like, there's maybe one or two, but even those would be hard.
So it'd have to be like a Lorsan Teka in the start of Force Awakens. Like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
This isn't anybody. Okay.
Right, yeah. This feels like it's important, but I have no context for it.
Well, and even so, anybody at this point would have to be Patrick Stewart's age, or it would just have to be a younger character who like represents like, you know, Starfleet's change.
So I have no idea how they would even present that as like trying to personify Starfleet of this change, of this. I don't know how they do that.
Well, they're going to, right? Because don't they? At the end of the episode, there was like the coming up on Picard, and you see him in the uniforms.
Yeah.
So he's going to go back to Starfleet.
Right.
So they're gonna address it.
I'm just curious how you do that when they never gave it like a
when there's
a
not
face
really a
in the
star
first place.
fleet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just anybody in the uniform, I guess, could do it.
LeVar Burton,
it just doesn't.
Could he come back?
Maybe.
Yeah, they've not. Yeah.
He's not really been talked about, but there are several other cast from different shows that are coming back.
I don't even know what or who he is. I just
Geordie LaForge,
reading Rainbow.
Yeah,
he's the one
that
that
say take a look.
He's the one. He's the Next Generation's punching bag. Anytime somebody's going to get beat up, it's going to be Geordie. And then they're going to take his visor because he's blind. The poor guy.
So that's why he went to reading Rainbow, because it could be like a happy show.
Basically, yeah.
So then after that, Picard is sitting out enjoying some wine with number one when Daj arrives.
The dialogue for Picard in this interaction is just very good. I think he says, he asks her like who twice, and then he says, "Why? No, calm yourself, calm yourself. How? Why?" Like, that's all he says the entire... That's it.
He definitely said what after she talked about, like, she went rogue and, like, killed a bunch of guys, and he goes, "What?" I love
what?
That.
Who are you?
I was with my boyfriend. We were in my apartment. They put a bag over my head. I couldn't see anything.
Who are they?
I don't know, but my boyfriend... They murdered him. But I killed them. All of them.
What?
And I mean, that'd be how you'd react if a stranger showed up on your property and talked about...
He goes through the who, what, when, where, why. He's getting all the deets, all the details, so that he can be informed.
The great interviewer, Picard.
That's really all his dialogue is in that whole scene.
It was real unusual. And she's not really much help. She doesn't really have answers to any of this anyway.
She doesn't answer his questions at all directly. She just keeps going, "Why?" And then she just keeps telling the story.
Yeah, she wants to know if he knows her.
Yeah.
They both seem very confused. But then he takes her back to his property, and Laris helps to heal her head, and then she has a cup of tea with Picard.
Or doesn't.
She does not have the tea.
No, she doesn't have the tea.
He offers it to her and then immediately asks her a bunch of questions.
Yeah,
and then
asks her about the necklace.
Shuffles her off to bed.
Off to bed now. Be gone with you.
Yeah, the necklace is an interesting... I mean, it's really just kind of these two circles kind of entwined.
Yeah, he's like, "What is this?" And she could either say it's the lower half of the Olympic symbol or 2/5 of the Audi symbol.
I used to own half an Audi.
It's these two circles.
But it definitely, I mean, it comes back into play at the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little unusual that he asks her about it and then he ends up with it. She didn't take it back.
Yeah, it wasn't that important to her.
Yeah.
Apparently not.
She just trusts him with it.
Or she forgets it.
Obviously she does.
Maybe it was a ploy by him, like, put the necklace down. Okay, go to bed now, because he wants the necklace.
Maybe.
I think he was trying to distract her. He wanted the tea and the necklace.
That looks like it has caffeine in it.
It's my favorite.
So yeah, she explains that, like, the necklace came from her father, and that she's got, like, this connection with Picard. She knows him.
But she does not say that she has a sister.
No.
Right. Right.
But at the end...
The other one does. Yeah.
My sister has the other one.
Which I thought about that when I saw the end scene again. I'm like, this is... All right, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, did she not know she had a sister? Or why would she... Once she, like, is told all these things, why would she withhold, like, well, I have a sister?
Yeah.
Like, why would...
Yeah.
So... I think
You
it's
have to assume
she doesn't know.
She doesn't know. Yeah.
Well, and, like, especially it being a twin sister.
Sister. So, you have a twin sister.
If she knew about it, like, I don't know. I would imagine if you're a twin and people ask you about things you don't know about, your first thought is usually, oh, you must be thinking about my twin. So when random people show up in the night to kidnap you,
like, oh, what did my sister get into this
right,
time?
Yeah. Like, so I think it's probably safe to say that she has no idea that she has a sister. A lot of this is probably just programmed into her.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's even doubled down on when she's talking to her mom, and her mom's like, "Oh, you just gotta get back to Picard."
Yeah.
But
Mom, I didn't say anything about Picard. Oh,
yeah.
We'll go back anyway.
Right.
Find him. Yeah.
It was. I don't know. It was just weird how they kind of played that off like it was a moment of. Typically, when a show does that, Well, I didn't tell you about this. It's usually like to reveal that there's something
like I don't trust this
happening.
person. And
That's what I expected. Because it like right after she says it, like there's interference. So I thought like it would the line would go dead or something, but she just doubles down.
Yeah. So I don't walk away from that scene feeling like the mom was. I don't know. That was just it was an interesting scene.
I didn't get that the mom was evil. I got that she was in on it.
She's in on it, but in on what? That Picard
She's
is also
like
not
the
in
Obi-Wan to the Luke on Tatooine. Like she
we
knows.
Can't do this. We can't.
I'm gonna keep referencing Star Wars because that's all I know in the.
She's like Obi-Wan to Luke on Hoth, where it's like, no, you got to go.
Right, but before that, like the Guardian.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's actually her mom. It can't be her mom because she's a clone, but the Guardian or
it's interesting.
I would wager that we'll find out. Though
the show could really take a lot of different twists and turns. What was up next?
And then Picard has a dream, another dream.
With the painting.
Yeah, he goes out and he sees Data, and he's back in his TNG uniform, and then Picard's also wearing his uniform when he goes out.
Would you like to finish it, Captain? I don't know how. That is not true, sir.
Which, this isn't a painting that we've seen before, which I was hoping... Because Data is seen to paint a lot in The Next Generation. It's one of his... he tries to write a lot of music and does some poetry. Like he tries to understand the arts.
Computers are notoriously bad at creating music.
He cannot whistle.
You can't.
Tell that to Daft Punk. No.
But yeah, he's painting this painting. The face is unfinished. And Picard wakes up.
Yeah, so he has one of these paintings in his house.
Yes, he looks up and he's like, "Oh, it's that one."
Yeah.
No, it's not that one.
Right, it's almost that one.
Two.
But he has a second one in the safe, which we go to and find out. Why would he say that he didn't know how to finish it? Like, I'm a little confused about what happens in that interaction, because it's either he didn't remember what was in the pictures, like in the one picture, because they're sister versions, or it's been altered, because he asks about, like, has anybody been in here? Has anything like?
Yeah.
I took it to mean, well, first of all, if somebody offered me to finish their painting, I'd say, I don't know how. It's because I have no artistic ability whatsoever, and I'm going to ruin your painting.
Right. I mean, that could be part of it, because...
You don't want me touching your beautiful painting, that's for sure.
There is a scene in which Data is given permission to critique a Picard painting, and he's not as kind as I think Picard was expecting him to be.
And the other one is, I think... There's this girl, and he's saying, I don't know who she is. I don't know how to finish, because he's trying to figure out, do I know you? He's trying to put two and two together, and he's saying, I don't know how to finish the painting or put the pieces together as to who she is.
I'm just not sure where the panic, or seemingly panic, comes from him. Like, if I own a piece of art, I probably know what it looks like.
You mean like him going down to the vault? That was a weird scene.
Because I don't understand what the panic is about.
Why did he need to go look at the painting?
Right, and then want to know, has anybody been in here? Has anybody done anything? We don't really get information on whether it's different than before, or if it's...
I took that they planted it, or maybe saw it to then replicate something off of it.
No, I think it's an original.
No, I'm saying, is that what he's wondering?
Well, he asked. I think in the dream, probably. I don't think he might have even realized. I don't know
what painting it was.
Well, he has a moment of realization when he looks at it later. He goes, "Oh, like no."
He's got it on his mantle above his desk. Like, he can't be unfamiliar with what the painting is.
Right. He's got one version, but then the version that he has over his desk is her facing away, and this was the one that Data was painting is her facing forward, and so then the one that he has in the vault is her facing forward, which is also the picture of Dash.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I didn't know what to make of that scene.
It seemed like he was going to the vault to make sure it was still there and to see if anybody had come up or come down to see it, to
Right.
then replicate her. But if not, then only Data knew what she looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was weird that he asked her about the computer lady, whatever her name was.
Yep.
Asked her to identify the painting.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't he know? He went there to look for it, and then he's got to ask her
he
to
has it
identify.
among his most
he
precious
knows
items.
what it is.
Well, he didn't know the name of that one. Maybe they have two different names.
He didn't know the name, yeah, but
Yeah.
it's weird that he identified this painting, please. He could have just said, "What's the name of this painting?"
Mm-hmm.
Because he knew where he got it, and
Yeah.
obviously that was for us, but it was just a weird.
Yeah, I don't know. It was cool being in the vault of like things that are sentimental to him.
Mm-hmm. Just
There's
a ton of little Easter eggs.
a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of you just continue to get a sense of like where Picard is at this point in the show. Like he's put a lot of stuff away, but he like the Picard Day banner. In the show, they try to celebrate Picard Day, and he really hates it. He doesn't. Picard in general doesn't like kids, and so to have
Understandable.
the kids of the Enterprise celebrating him, he was very uncomfortable with. But yet he keeps the banner. I don't know. It's also, this show is very much made for the people who like Star Trek.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And so it always is teasing you with this little thing or that little Easter egg, it's fine. I like it, at least.
And it was made for people who like Star Wars because he was walking through the Jedi library.
Yes,
To
that
get
is
to
what
his
it seemed
vault.
like.
It was. I think they just reused that set.
Yeah, and the Starfleet headquarters there. I realized it once they were on the roof. I was like, "Oh, this is the Anaheim Convention Center." and then when I went back and watched, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is the big building. There is the big like auditorium where they premiered the Force Awakens teaser trailer." And I was like, "Oh."
They're all about Star Wars.
Yeah.
In this iteration of Star Trek.
Well, cool.
What's the name of the Klingon blade? Is it the Backleth?
The Batleth.
Bathleth. Yeah. What if he had like strolled out like just wielding that? Like I'm probably gonna need this.
That's what he came there for.
Yeah.
That's going to be when he finally realizes he's got to go somewhere. He's going to run back and grab that. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would have been awesome for him to walk out of the vault with that. But anyway, he walks out and Dodge meets him out there, seemingly inexplicably, claiming that people were after her. Or no, they have a brief interaction about how did you find me here?
Yeah.
And then she's like, oh shoot, people are here.
Yeah, she has like this instinctual like knowing that it's going to happen.
Yeah. Which I'm assuming is just she's activated now, versus where
She's the Jason Bourne of Star Trek now.
She would presumably before this she was always like a normal person until she's now activated. Now she can hack really fast and she can sense when people are around, and I don't know. To which this leads into another moment of like, oh, he's too old to be doing
to be running up the stairs.
You know that it was a stunt double just running for
immediately.
him. Just running, it was a stunt double. Probably
Upstairs, it was a stunt double. Oh, it's uncomfortable to me. I want Patrick Stewart to live a long, healthy life.
Well, he's getting all this exercise in. He's doing it.
I mean, you remember hearing about like Force Awakens and like Harrison Ford breaking his hip or leg. Yeah. These people are getting old. This is good. So when do we say enough is enough? Just let them rest.
I think he got injured because a door fell on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which would happen to a young person as well. Or maybe he was too slow to get out of the way because of his elderly reaction time, maybe.
Possibly. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Picard hasn't had to contend with any sliding doors yet, though.
So you think all these Legacy sequels are really like elder abuse?
It's starting to seem this way. Dragging him up and down the stairs. And then it gets worse in the next scene. Because we get another really good fight scene.
It was very good.
She's jumping around like a flea.
Like Neo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She takes out like a bunch of them. One of them, his helmet comes off, and it's revealed to be a Romulan. Or it could be a Vulcan. We don't know. They look the same.
It's pretty presumable. Like reasonable to think it's a Romulan.
Was this a thing in Star Trek, the green goo that he spits
That's
and
all
then
new.
Causes her to explode?
So they talk about this in the ready room, that it's a vial, like it was a poison.
Like how a spy would have like a fake tooth with the
right.
Because it was the gun that exploded, right?
I guess so.
Because it got on that and it like was overheating.
But then she also blows up. That scene's pretty graphic.
Yeah.
You go back and watch it closely. It's pretty like you watch her explode.
Which I was fully expecting this scene to be like, oh, she takes battle damage, and now we can see like like the
the
Terminator thing. Yeah, that's what I was expecting. I guess out of this, you get to see the cybernetic brain and all that. She done.
She did.
She's just gone. But then Picard gets thrown 50 feet back, and I'm like, well, he's done too.
And to speak into the advanced treatment, not even to a hospital.
He just goes to his
blown
couch.
back by a fireball and
wakes up.
Very carefully transport him all the way home to his couch.
Or maybe he was out for several months in a coma, and they just cut that out. There were probably deleted scenes of them visiting him.
Oh yeah, the Romulans realized there was no way they would get to keep Chateau Picard if he dies.
Yeah,
so they just took him home to let him. Let him fade out of existence.
So the next scene is
you got better
months after this. This has been a long recovery for Picard.
We don't know how long it was. Oh
yeah, it's very true.
Yeah, he just got thrown like a rag doll, and then he wakes up on his couch more or less fine. Maybe he's a clone.
He could be.
That'd be a really good twist.
He survived it better than the other clone did.
That would be an interesting. Yeah, I mean, we just blew up one. Daj just got blown up, which I was really not expecting that at all. The character comes in, she's full of intrigue.
You're like, this is what it's all about,
right?
And then kudos to them for doing that, because you don't have like a character normally say, and obviously
when you have
just
a
like
backup,
they're like, we still have her. She's just only one now, but like to do that in the first episode was pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't know. I thought she was going to be kind of the MacGuffin through a lot of this, but no, she's gone.
She's gone.
Yeah.
To which then he goes to the kind of the what is the institute?
Daystrom Institute.
Which is a direct reference to what is his name? Maxwell. I'm sorry. The Daystrom Institute is an old Star Trek. If I remember right, it goes back to the original trilogy, the original series.
That sounds right.
There was a doctor that was studying android cybernetics and stuff then, and it gets referenced throughout a lot of Star Trek. Like I know Deep Space Nine references it. It comes up a couple of times in Next Generation.
I'm sorry, I was like reading up. I was like, what was the first? It looks like, I think it is the Ultimate Computer.
Daystrom is?
Yeah, it's the first episode that Daystrom is referenced in.
Oh, okay.
It's called the
Ultimate
Computer.
Okay. And I've been to Okinawa. I lived there for 2 years, and this place is not there.
This is all fiction?
It was very unrealistic to me. What was also unrealistic, we sort of skipped over their conversation on the bench, but you have this young lady sitting on a bench with this old senile man who's just rambling. And how many times have we all been in that situation where you just have an old person telling you way too much information, and she asks what none of us ever have, why are you telling me all this? What are you going on about, old man? We've all just been stuck like, and just wait for them to fall asleep so we can leave. She actually asked, like, why are you wasting my time here? That was unrealistic. That was the most unrealistic part of the show for me, because nobody asks old people that. You just let them finish.
He's one of those emotional vampires from What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, she handled him very graciously.
She's like, what's your point?
I've got a question for you.
People, I told you people are trying to kill me. Can we not? Let's speed up story time here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they go to Daystrom, and Kristen Bell's sister, which it looks like I don't think that's true, but
no, it's Alison Pill from
looks like
Scott Pilgrim. She's
looks
the
like
drummer in Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah,
looks like Kristen Bell.
Has she done anything else?
I've seen her in other stuff.
I know her name, but I don't know. Like, I know her from Scott Pilgrim, and that's about it. But I know she's relevant for some reason. Yeah, and I think she'll be like a reoccurring character. Which is cool.
I believe, according to the trailers and everything, she'll be part of this series. But he meets her, and he asks if they'd be able to ever make an android out of flesh and blood that's sentient, and she laughs in his face about it and tells him it's impossible. And she shows him like their lab, which is all theoretical now that the synthetics are banned. But it was all the dream of one Bruce Maddox, who this like kind of like all comes like back to. It's this Bruce Maddox is a character in season 2, episode 9, Measure of a Man, in which Data's rights as a person are put on trial, because Bruce Maddox believes that Data is the property of Starfleet, and he wants to take Data apart and figure out how he works so that he can create more of him. And Picard thinks this is dangerous because then you are creating a race, and then what are the rights of said race?
Yeah.
And all of these androids that went rogue and attacked Mars were because of Maddox, it seems.
Yeah, that's a super intense episode too, because the way that Starfleet law worked, Maddox was entitled to whatever the next like ranking officer as legal as his lawyer was, and so Riker has to argue against Data's sentience. And it was like, it's a super good episode because they present two really good points, and like Riker presents this case that's fantastic, where it ends with him actually like turning Data off. He actually switches. He's like, I present to you the puppet or something like that.
He like cuts the strings.
Yeah,
in essence.
Yeah, and he turns him off, and like Picard's like, wow, that's a really good argument. Thanks a lot, Riker.
But he had to go full in on it.
But it was presented in such a way that it was like, wow, how do you even argue against that?
Yeah, I guess if there's like one episode for this series, I would recommend like checking out for kind of like some contextual, like both to people listening, like, and to you, would probably be like that one, as far as
Measure of a Man seems like it's going to play a big, not only because of Data, but also because of Maddox.
Well, I was going to ask, Maddox is the one that's gone, right? She says he disappeared after the ban, and clearly production of these things continued in some way.
Right, for her to exist at all.
Yeah. Is that what the show is going to be about? Because they ask, where are the others? With the Romulans, when they first show up, where are the others? Is that what the show's going to be about? Is
Maybe.
finding Maddox and figuring out what he's doing?
It could be. It's also not like the Next Generation, because Data was such an anomaly. He was kind of one of a kind. He was his processing power was equivalent of like the whole Enterprise, and
His
multiple
neural
times
network, positronic brain.
Yeah, there's one point where they like upload everything. He can remotely control the whole Enterprise just by himself. He's the perfect android, right? And so it's a reoccurring thing where people want to take him, recreate him, turn him, all these different things. So it wouldn't be unheard of for them to use Daj's sister as another kind of a one-off character. She can do all these things, but there's not a million of them. I don't know. It really could go a couple different ways. Well, but then we see, even in this scene, we see she's showing Picard before and explaining that it didn't take the way that
he handles seeing his best friend's head in a drawer very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't even flinch. He's like, yeah.
He's seen Data's head like that a few times, so.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
So it's not the first
But
time.
also,
I just finished watching
every night in his dreams too.
Exactly.
But yeah, there's before just all sliced up. And that was so in like Star Trek Nemesis, that was one of the
precursors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like a prototype Data, but there shouldn't have been any other models. That's what that was the breadcrumb that really started that movie off, was like they start finding this other android's parts places, and there shouldn't have been more. And apparently before wasn't even really ready to exist anyway, because we find out in this that it didn't. He's not Data. Did they explain? I don't remember now. Did they explain why he's not? Is it just that the synthetic life isn't allowed, and so they had to dismantle him?
Why B4 is not alive?
Yeah, right.
He
I would assume.
He said they tried to transfer it, but it didn't take.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's what she says.
Yeah, but he could have still just been his own person. But the reason he's in the drawer is probably because of the synthetic. Yeah.
Do you think they're gonna fix him? Like that's gonna be the Doctor's role, is gonna fix, and then Data's gonna come back as B4? Later.
Maybe. I feel like they're so definitive about Data being kind of this memory that I think he's gone. I don't know that we're going to walk away from this series with Data being back and everybody's happy. But I mean, they could. They still have an android body,
and they still have his essence,
right?
And these daughters of his,
yeah.
Which this is also not the first time that Data's tried to create a daughter.
Lol.
Yes, he tried to make a daughter called Lol, to be better than him and to experience emotions, but the emotions made her fail.
Yeah,
Systems failure when she started experiencing emotions.
Her positronic brain started. There's a specific way he described it. I don't remember what it is. It's like a cascading failure, basically.
It blew up.
Yeah. And then there's another, but I don't. Okay. Pardon this, but how does lore end? They just launch him out into space, don't they?
Well, I don't really remember right now.
I don't remember either.
The last time I've seen lore in my rewatch is when he steals the emotions chip. They do the Cain and Abel.
So there's
no, not Cain and Abel. Jacob and Esau. They pull that. He pulls that trick on Dr. Noonien soon, and he escapes with Data's emotions chip.
Yeah.
So yeah, lore could.
I don't remember. I don't think he destroyed.
Yeah, his body could still be around.
I think so. Data's evil twin
The other half of the dyad.
Yeah, the other half of the dyad. I think they just launch him out into space is the last time we see him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's completely reasonable that he could come back in some way, shape, or form. I think they did that on purpose because he's a fascinating foil to Data. And then without Data around, I don't know. So this really could go like anywhere. We don't have enough information on like what these other synthetic life forms were.
Mm-hmm.
We're led to believe they weren't anything near what Daj and her sister are, or were, and Data never had any hiccups in his morals or anything. He never, other than like isolated incidents where he gets hacked or whatever.
Oh yeah, and then there's episode 2 of the whole show, The Naked Now, is when the entire crew gets infected with this disease that takes away your inhibitions and makes you act drunk. And for some reason it affects Data, like, which they never, from then on, anything that happens to like all the biological people, they make sure like it doesn't affect Data. But for whatever reason, this disease also affects Data as well in that episode. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Star Trek. So we've not really talked about this, but this show is definitely another shift in tone. Because The Next Generation has some just real hokey things that happen in it. The fight choreography, for one, is just not great throughout pretty much anything in The Next Generation. But also, there's plot lines that come up and don't get resolved, and there's just kooky things that happen sometimes. It's kind of a silly show.
It's part of the fun.
Yeah. Yeah, and Picard so far is a culmination of the most serious elements of The Next Generation. So like, there's even, speaking of evil twins, there's an episode early on where Riker, the first commander, or the first mate, who will show up in some episodes here to come, they discover a distress signal from a mission that he had years ago and find out there's the transporter accidentally made a perfect clone of him. And so like this whole episode they're back and forth with 2 Rikers, and at the end of the episode the additional one just leaves and they never talk about him again. But there's this completely perfect clone of him,
like
with all
Buzz
the same...
Lightyear in Toy Story 2.
Yeah, basically.
There's 2 of them.
There's 2 of them, and they never address it again, but there's another one. Like, that kind of hokiness that you're like, well, yeah, that would cause all kinds of problems. Like, he's showing up, you know, he has the same security clearance. How's this work?
Same thumbprint.
Right. That kind of stuff is riddled all through The Next Generation, and it seems like this show is going to do its best to try and separate itself from that hokiness, but keep some of the better storylines, which I like, and I also don't like.
Yeah, because it's also like, like today with this kind of sci-fi, you kind of have to take like this serious approach like all the time, but at the same time, it's like, oh, it's not. You're building upon something that was not all that, which is something, you know, they at least, you know, with the Star Wars films, they still keep with like, you know, it's allowed to be hokey and fun, and there are moments where you roll your eyes, but it's kind of part of the DNA that's always been there.
Yeah. Well, and that even follows through every iteration of Star Trek. It's like The Next Generation hit this kind of level of humor and hokiness that was great, and usually based off of character kind of humor, and that held. I mean, Voyager did it, Deep Space Nine did it, Enterprise did it. I don't know about Discovery. I would assume they did it.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I love about Discovery is Rainn Wilson shows up in a few episodes playing Harry Mudd. And if you're familiar with the original series, that's like a really like kooky character.
I'm not familiar enough with the original series.
He's look up Harry Mudd.
Interesting. So I don't know if we'll get any humor in Picard. It seems the tone is pretty serious so far. Maybe it'll let up as we kind of get introduced to maybe some more of the different characters.
Which is ironic because like Data is like often like one of the sources of like the most humor in the series.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Situational and like but then that also begs the question of like, there's no way this show addresses Wesley Crusher, right? Like,
I don't know. I feel like it.
So one of the hokiest parts of Next Generation is Wesley Crusher, the son of the doctor of the ship, who is a savant because they've deemed him so, and so he's like 16, if that. And he's like on the bridge of the ship. Like he's like the pilot. And multiple times throughout the series, he saves them single-handedly from danger because he's just that smart.
And he leaves about halfway through, he leaves like the series as a regular. And every time like he shows up, it's always like, all right, I have a feeling like Wesley is going to like be the one to save the day in this episode.
And it's almost always true. And he just never... He's a frustrating character. Like, I didn't mind him when I was a kid and watching through it. I was like, oh, cool, a kid. But as an adult, you watch it and you're like...
Shut up, Wesley.
Then shut up, Wesley.
But, like, could you imagine an aircraft carrier in our Navy with a 14-year-old? Oh, he's just really smart, so that means he can do this.
He's the doctor's kid.
What? No.
I don't think they allow that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that episode where everybody's drunk, he takes over the ship. He like hacks into it, and he's like, he commandeers, and he's like, I'm the captain now.
Because he's so smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Star Trek is an interesting. There's just very few things that hit that same level of like it's hokey, but also it's able to bring up kind of these very deep humanitarian things and bring up serious like political issues and stuff, and still come back at the end of the day and be really silly and zany. And this seems like such a serious take on that I hope to get some sort of humor, some sort of Data's levity. I don't know.
Yeah, trying to find. I'm sure in the episodes to come we'll find more of those characters who we can be like, oh, that's like the levity there, and so we'll see. But yeah, so the doctor, she explains that Maddox probably engineered her, and that the necklace like represents. Well, what did the necklace represent?
It represents what would Jesus do, and so it's a reminder that even as a synthetic life form,
does she have a soul?
That's a question they always ask about Data. But yeah, so she says that Maddox probably like modeled her after that painting. Like Data's essence is essentially like in her. And that there is another, which Picard goes, twins.
She says there's always two. Okay.
So then we see a starship arriving at a.
She says, "Oh, I guess you could make them like that," which is funny that they've never even considered doing it, making a woman. She's like, "This is a totally new concept."
Yeah.
Aren't there only two options? They've never even thought about making a woman. It was weird.
That is interesting.
It was weird. It's only ever men.
Yeah, I mean, given the choice, I would probably pick a female form anyway.
I would.
If you're going to be able to jump mountains anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I play a video game, I always make myself a female. I don't know what that says, but it's just weird that they never even considered making a woman. Just out of the question.
Yeah, for such a forward-thinking Starfleet,
Yeah.
the Federation is so equality and all that.
Yeah.
Or why not even make it like sexless? There are times when they try to like make a sexless race, and there's in the next gen, and it's always played by a man or a woman, and you can tell.
What is it supposed to do? It's just a puppet?
Know.
I don't know. Speaking of characters that may or may not show up, do you suppose we see Luxwana Troy? Deanna Troy's mom?
Well, I don't... I mean, the actress herself has passed away, correct?
I'm
Gene
sure
Roddenberry's wife.
They have the technology to bring people back, though.
She's the...
I know that.
Oh, yeah. We'll probably definitely hear her voice, because her voice is the voice of, like, the ships.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's true.
And they had her record, like, all these different words and all these different vowel sounds and kind of like the alphabet, so that they could like keep using her voice as the voice of the ships.
So there was this really just crazy character. The ship's counselor's mother would show up every once in a while, and she's a Beta Z, which means that she's somewhat she's empathic.
Mm-hmm.
And she had a thing for Picard. Like, her favorite thing was to show up on the ship and just make him as uncomfortable as she possibly could by throwing herself at him and just constantly like showing up in his quarters and
because she's a Beta Z, or because she's telepathic to a degree, she can sense thoughts and emotions. So she would always talk about like, oh, Picard, nobody's ever thought of me that way, like right in front of everybody.
The dude who can like stare down Klingons and Romulans, and like she was just a weird foil to him that he was tense every episode that she's in, because
and whenever they always begin the episodes with like, you kind of like get a setup of stuff where, you know, first officer's log or captain's log, and there's one that begins with Troy, and all she says is, my mother is on board. It's like, that's all you need to know.
Which Diana Troy and Commander Riker, Will Riker, are married now, and so they'll be in episodes to come.
Mm-hmm.
It would just, I don't know. If talking about trying to break some of the tension, that would do it.
Yeah.
That would really, even now, I doubt it. Like you said, I think she has long since passed away.
Yeah. But then, yeah, we see a starship arriving at a Romulan reclamation site, and a Romulan named Narek.
Narek.
That was a typo.
Because Romulans just remove...
Like Sarek.
We should have introduced ourselves as Nyan and Navis and Null, because that's just, they just take out the first consonant and replace it with an N.
Sounds right. He arrives and he meets Dr. Soji Asha.
Noji.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. It's Soji.
Narek, Noji.
Daja's twin, and he says that he's been reading her work and has a lot of questions for her. And
this guy's the bad guy, right?
I mean,
this has got to be the bad guy.
It seems like it.
Yeah. Or an agent of the bad guy who will be revealed later. But
I mean, they spend a lot of time with the birds of prey coming in,
mm-hmm.
and then they have this conversation. But then I mean, it's all very dark and spooky, which is... Star Trek's not very coy about who the bad guy is most of the time.
There's not a lot of subtleties there.
No, not really.
But with a name like Narek,
it's got to be good.
That's... Agree to disagree.
But we see she's got the necklace too. She knows she has a sister. He says something about...
He says, oh, you're so lucky to have a sister because his brother died last year.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you don't want to hear another, like, sad story. You hear that all the time. And then she says, guess again.
Which, I don't know who his brother could be. I'm guessing it's not a character we've met before.
Yeah,
my guess is
not.
this is probably more wrapped
right
up
off.
narrative.
Yeah.
But then we pull back,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a Borg cube.
Yeah.
So we've got Romulans on board the Borg cube. This means things, Joel.
I imagine it does. It seemed like a pretty cinematic shot.
Yeah.
For it to not mean anything, but it
Yeah.
just looked like the thing from Transformers.
Yeah, the little, what is it? The Mother Cube?
The
or something?
cube.
No, not the Cosmic Cube. The
Whatever.
Tesseract. No, that's still the
right.
same thing, but a different name.
It was a cube in space, and I've seen it
Yeah.
before, but not in Star Trek.
So the main, like...
Very ominous, though.
Yeah. The main antagonist of the Next Generation is, like, the Romulans, until they run into this whole species of... it's not even really a species. They're cyborgs that just basically assimilate whole cultures. They come in. They don't really have any clear like goal other than just to consume
Take it
all
all.
life.
Yeah.
Until later on, they don't even really have like. They're pretty much just this faceless force for a long time. They don't really talk. They don't really interact. They just.
It's a hive mind.
Yeah, the first time the Enterprise encounters them, it just kind of grabs them with a tractor beam and then just starts carving circles out of the ship and just pulling the decks apart and like
kill 17 people.
People are it's just it's beyond anything they had encountered before. It's terrifying for a while. And then from that point on, the Borg are just this eminent thing that's coming. They're faster, they're stronger, it's the greatest kind of foil to somebody who's Picard, because he prides himself on being able to kind of talk through all of these different issues. But the Borg don't talk, they don't care. The only thing they say is basically
resistance is futile.
Right, prepare to be assimilated.
We are the Borg. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service us. Resistance is futile.
They're a really good villain
Mm-hmm.
by comparison to everything else that's just these political disagreements. The Borg are not a political disagreement. They're just there.
You can't reason with them or do anything.
And so from the point that they're introduced on, the game really changes for the Next Generation and in general Star Trek. They've really become kind of the big bad of the Star Trek universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so for them to be introduced episode 1 and some sort of like the Romulans are there with their birds of prey, so we didn't even really see any Borg.
No, we don't see
board.
anything like you just like see the architecture all around them.
Right. So there's a question of like, where are they? Or like, just to have their ship there begs a whole lot of questions about. Are the Romulans in partnership with the Borg somehow? We've never seen anything like that before.
Mm-hmm.
Have the Romulans figured out how to take them over, shut them down? Anything. I was not expecting episode 1 to jump that deep into. I don't know. Like it seemed like the narrative was going one direction with like Data and these children and synthetic
this
life.
This is what it's about.
Yeah. And then right at the very end it throws this curveball that's like, okay, so everything else could just be irrelevant if the Borg are even remotely near Earth and could just take out all of humanity in a couple hours.
Or whatever their plan is.
Or what, right.
Because their plan seems to also be like, has to do with the synthetic life forms. Which
on some level or another, right? Yeah, because but they're also like
they're that themselves. So it's I don't know what.
Yeah, they're one of the more interesting things in the Star Trek universe, just because they don't play by the rules of anything else in the universe.
Yeah. And then another interesting, I think, important fact that is going to play a part in this is Picard was assimilated by them at one point and became known as Locutus.
I am Locutus of Borg. Resistance is futile. Your life, as it has been, is over. From this time forward, you will service us.
He was to act as kind of a bridge between the Borg and humans, just to kind of let them know you can't escape. And then eventually they get him back, and they're able to bring Picard out of it. But he's definitely got some PTSD from that stays with him throughout.
Right, and the rest of the series, he's clearly scared of the cost of becoming a Borg, and it's alluded to that he lost part of his humanity. It's not even alluded to; it's kind of straightforwardly laid out that he lost part of his humanity in that season.
Yeah,
and so we don't even know. I've always been curious, is he fully organic still?
I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Got everything back?
I know there's a character showing up here soon that is also tied to the Borg. Though I've never watched Voyager. I know she's from Voyager. I mean, I guess we can talk about it once she shows up, but I have no reference for her other than I'm kind of putting together. I'm this character has connections to the Borg.
Yeah, very definitive connections to the Borg. So that's gonna change whatever I thought was gonna happen in the series.
Yeah, so exciting things. I don't know where to go from there.
Right. So as a series so far, they've put a lot of time and energy into it. It definitely feels like they've done their homework. They're in a cool space in Star Trek that they can kind of cherry pick the best lines of the narratives and kind of weave it all together into maybe one thing, or maybe we'll have a whole slew of different things.
Yeah.
I don't know. If it's going to go on for seasons, I hope they have enough runway for that.
They pace themselves.
Yeah.
How many episodes is this season?
10.
So decent length.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty long.
Pretty long for what we've seen recently. Most other seasons have been 8 or 9.
Yeah.
They went a full 10.
So yeah, it's already been renewed for a second season. Last week, Patrick Stewart was making the rounds, doing all the promos for it. One of which was on The View, and while there, he formally invited Whoopi Goldberg to join the cast of season 2 in some way, shape, or form.
So, in The Next Generation, it was doing so well at the time, and Whoopi Goldberg was a huge fan for some reason, that she approached them about being part of the show, and so they wrote her into the show as Guinan. She's basically the waitress of 10 Forward of the cafeteria.
She's the real counselor.
And she's
There's Troy, but then there's also Guinan, who people actually go to talk about their problems.
Which there's never really any tension there. Now that I think about it, but she's super mysterious. She gets introduced about the same time the Borg does, though, doesn't she?
Yes, same season.
Because you find out later on that the Borg, she's the last of her kind or whatever, and the Borg came to her planet and killed everybody or assimilated everybody.
She's very ancient. In fact, if you want your Star Wars connection, she's Maz Kanata.
Oh yeah, with a lot more to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's just an anomaly. They never even bother to give you really many answers about who she is or what she does. Yeah, she really is the insert. Like, she's who Maz was based off of, basically.
Yeah,
She
when we
just-
started like doing the next gen rewatch, I was like, oh, I think they based a lot of Maz Kanata off of this character.
Interesting.
Runs the cantina. She knows the crew intimately for no real reason.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them have eyebrows.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and so it's exciting and interesting to see like her potentially next year, but at the same time we've got like this data problem where Guinan is supposed to be very ancient and doesn't age the same way as humans, but we're gonna see modern day Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
Unless they
They
can
can
give her
write their way
the
out.
Princess Leia Rogue One treatment and do a CGI on herself.
Yeah.
Of her.
But for a TV show, for seasons at a time, that's tough.
Or she can just
I mean,
wear
that's
like a printout cardboard mask with her face on it.
Yeah, maybe.
Like a Happy Meal cutout, and just be her face of her when she's younger.
Either
that
way,
was like the budget of Discovery. That's how they would have done the mask.
I think it was better than that.
Either way, I mean, Guinan coming back to Star Trek would be interesting. She has some sort of history with the Borg. She has all kinds of history with the main cast.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to hopefully seeing Michael Dorn come back as Worf.
I was running.
He's the
through
one that
original.
I'm like really want to see them. And speaking of people who age and don't age, he's the one who's aged the least. Like he looks amazing.
Well, and unfortunately, was the one that wore the most prosthetic stuff.
Yeah, so they could fix him with prosthetics, but
yeah, he's up there as far as the most interesting characters in Star Trek, because the whole original series, the villains are the Klingons,
And he is a Klingon.
and he's
right?
a Klingon.
Yeah.
So when they've announced like who is going to be part of the commanding officers, it's like, oh, you have a Klingon on the bridge,
yeah,
and a child.
And then this is so weird because that premiered in '87, and then 2 years later in '89, I think is when the Undiscovered Country like came out, and that's all about the peace treaty that goes on between like the Federation and the Klingons that like leads to, you know, Worf being on the Enterprise. So interesting stuff going on there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's good to be back in this this kind of universe. Everybody's a lot older.
Yeah.
But it seems like they actually have some writing behind it, and I don't know. It could go pretty much anywhere from here.
Yeah. So, really looking forward to seeing where this series goes and kind of joining everybody along for that ride. So, is there any closing thoughts either of you have on the episode?
No, I'm still chewing on Maz Kanata and Guinan.
Cool. All right. Well, in the meantime, you can find us on Twitter as Who Watches Pod and on Instagram and Facebook. Episodes of this show can be found on the main feed of Who Watches. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any podcatcher of your choice. Also, don't forget we're on YouTube, where we post every episode of this show and any show that we post. And whatever service you're listening on, please subscribe and leave us a review, as those are greatly appreciated and help us out. And also in the meantime, Ryan, where can people find more of your work?
You can find me at Harbjagen, that's Harbjagen on Twitter.
Cool.
And they can
Joel?
find me at State Farm.
Nice. All right. So, until next week, set course for Season 1, Episode 2. Warp 9, engage.